Welcome to Whisper Tales, where every whisper hides a nightmare. 99% of you guys are just watching but not subscribing. If you love spine-chilling horror stories that keep you up at night, then hit subscribe and join our dark journey. Because the next tale might be about you. The next morning, Elliot and Grace awoke to an eerie silence once more. The moon had not set. It still hung in the sky, as though the night had never ended. The passage of time had broken. There was no sun, no birdsong, just an endless silver glow that painted everything in haunting shades of gray. Grace stared out the window, her breath fogging the glass. It's the same sky, same light. We're stuck in a night that never ends. Elliot rubbed his temples. We need answers. We need to understand what this place is. They dressed quickly and ventured outside. The villagers moved slowly, dreamlike, repeating the same motions they had seen the day before. A woman swept her porch in an endless loop. A man fed invisible horses. Children skipped in place, eyes glassy. Grace grabbed Elliot's hand. They're not real. Or they're trapped too. They made their way to the chapel, the source of the strange bell, the chanting, the candlelight. The tall, ancient structure loomed at the center of Moormire. Its stained glass windows were dull, dust-covered, depicting scenes of moons, beasts, and hooded figures. They tried the door. It creaked open with a long groan. Inside it was dim. Dust floated in beams of moonlight. The altar was adorned with symbols either of them recognized, circles within circles, runes etched in black wax. The candle from the previous night still burned, though no one was present. Grace stepped forward. These symbols, they're not Christian. This isn't a chapel. It's something else. Older. Behind the altar was a staircase, hidden behind a tapestry of the moon in its phases. Elliot pulled it aside. Let's see what they're hiding. The stairs led downward, deeper than expected. Cold air rose up to meet them. The stone walls narrowed as they descended, the air turning thick with the scent of damp earth and old decay. At the bottom was a crypt. Carvings lined the walls, depictions of rituals under the full moon. Sacrifices. Beasts in robes. Eyes everywhere. In the center of the chamber was a stone table, and on it, a book. Elliot opened it. The pages were in Latin, but there were drawings, detailed images of people being taken by the moonlight, bound and presented to something immense and shadowed. One picture showed a door opening under the moon, swallowing people whole. Grace stepped back. This village is a trap. It's a cycle. The full moon opens a doorway, and the village wakes to feed the thing behind it. Elliot flipped to the back of the book. There was a page that seemed newer, cleaner. Drawings of modern people. A couple in a car. Them. Their breath caught. They were expecting us, Grace whispered. A scraping sound echoed above. Footsteps. The villagers were descending. Dozens of feet thudded against the stone steps. The sound of soft chanting grew louder. Elliot grabbed the book. We have to hide. They ducked behind a pillar just as the villagers filed into the crypt. At their lead was the old woman who had welcomed them. Her bonnet was gone, revealing a bald scalp etched with symbols. Her eyes glowed faintly. She raised her hands. Tonight the gate is widest. The blood of the willing and the unaware will keep Moormire fed for another cycle. The villagers began to hum. Elliot and Grace remained frozen, hearts pounding. Then, from the shadows, something stirred. It wasn't human. A figure emerged from the far wall, a being tall and featureless, with skin that shimmered like liquid shadow. It had no face, only a hole where a face should be, and from that hole came a low, mournful wail. Grace whimpered. Elliot clamped a hand over her mouth. The creature glided toward the altar. The villagers bowed. The old woman spoke in that strange language again. Then she raised a dagger, black and curved, and pointed toward the entrance. They are here. The villagers turned in unison. Elliot and Grace bolted. They ran up the stairs, the book still clutched in Elliot's hands. The chanting turned to screams. The creature shrieked, and the chapel trembled. Bursting into the cold air, They didn't stop running. Past the square, past the inn, toward the forest. But the forest had changed. The trees were like walls, shifting, bending to trap them. "We need to end the ritual," Grace cried. "Break the cycle. That's the only way out." Elliot nodded, flipping through the book. "There's a counter-ritual. A way to close the gate. But it needs blood. A sacrifice." He looked at her. She looked at him. "We'll find another way," she said. "We have to." Behind them, the bell began to toll again. The full moon swelled, its glow becoming unbearable. They turned back toward the village. Toward the altar. Toward the gate. The final night had arrived. Elliot could feel it in his bones, the oppressive weight of inevitability, the crushing awareness that something ancient and terrible was building toward a crescendo. The village of Moormire pulsed with energy. The road still hadn't returned. The air was heavy, and the moon loomed like an unblinking eye, casting a silvery glow that made shadows come alive. Grace clung to his hand as they walked through the empty inn, every floorboard creaking like a scream waiting to burst free. They hadn't eaten in 2 days. The food left out by the innkeeper now reeked, crawling with flies, though the villagers still served steaming plates to each other with cheerful grins. Elliot paused at the top of the stairs and whispered, "They're getting ready for something tonight." Grace didn't respond. Her skin looked paler than before, and her eyes were distant, hollow. She hadn't slept, not really. Her dreams had grown worse, vivid visions of firelit ceremonies, cloaked figures with hollow eyes, blood dripping into silver chalices. "We can't stay here," Elliot muttered. "Tonight's it. If we wait, we die." Grace suddenly stopped. "What if we already did?" He turned to her, his expression filled with concern. "What?" She looked at him, her voice trembling. "What if we died that first night and this is punishment? We're trapped because we're not supposed to leave." "Don't say that." He took her by the shoulders. "This place isn't hell. It's a trap, yes, but we're alive. And we need to act like it. We need to get out." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Okay. Let's do it." They waited until dusk. The village began to shift again as it always did, smiling faces turning to waxen masks, laughter hollowing into echoing moans, lights flickering like dying stars. The villagers emerged from their homes in ceremonial garb, black robes embroidered with crescent moons and golden thread. They headed toward the chapel at the center of Moormire, just as they had every night, only tonight, it was different. Elliot and Grace slipped through the alleyways, sticking to the shadows. The chapel bell began to toll, slower this time, each strike like the heartbeat of something monstrous awakening. The chapel doors were open, and from within poured the sound of chanting, low, guttural, unnatural. Through a narrow stained glass window, they could see the villagers forming a circle around the altar, and on it, a new name was being etched. Grace gasped. "That's our names. Mine and yours." Elliot pulled her back. "They're getting ready for the offering." "Where do they keep the relic?" she whispered. They remembered the mural in the chapel, the one Grace had dreamt about. A silver relic, crescent-shaped, bathed in moonlight and power. Elliot had a hunch. It wasn't just a symbol. It was an anchor. The relic had to be destroyed. Back at the inn, in the room where the shadows stretched too far and the mirror reflected things that weren't moving, Elliot tore through drawers and floorboards until he found a hidden compartment beneath the bed. Inside was a journal, written by a previous traveler. Dated 1894. He flipped through the pages. "The moon returns. I write with what little strength remains. The silver talisman is the key. Destroy it, and you sever the tether. But beware, the village fights back. They watch through the walls. They know your thoughts. Burn it under the blood moon. Only then can the veil be lifted. Moormire lives through us, and dies through fire." Elliot held up the journal. "This is it. We need to find that relic." Grace's voice was a whisper. "Chapel basement?" He nodded. They moved quickly, keeping to the dark. By now, the entire village had gathered in the chapel. The ritual had begun. The moon was rising higher, round and full, casting light that made their skin itch. The chapel doors were flanked by 2 silent villagers, eyes white, faces blank. Elliot and Grace circled around back, where a locked cellar door waited. With a crowbar found near the blacksmith's shop, Elliot pried it open. The steps creaked as they descended. The basement smelled of earth, mildew, and something older, blood and ash. Candles lined the walls, flickering without flame. Strange symbols were carved into the stone, pulsing faintly with blue light. At the center of the room, on a pedestal of bone and root, sat the relic. It was beautiful in a terrible way, crafted from silver, shaped like a crescent moon with runes etched deep into its surface. It shimmered despite the lack of light, almost humming. As Grace reached out to grab it, the candles flared. "No," Elliot hissed. "We burn it. Like the journal said." He poured lantern oil onto the pedestal. Grace lit a match, hands trembling. Just as the flame touched the relic, a scream erupted from the chapel above. Not a human one, deeper, guttural, monstrous. The relic began to vibrate violently, and from the walls, they came, villagers with blank eyes, mouths stitched shut, moving like puppets. The cult. "Elliot, hurry!" Grace screamed, backing into the corner as the figures surged forward. He grabbed a nearby torch and plunged it into the oil. The relic caught fire, blue flames erupting upward, licking the ceiling. The silver hissed and twisted. The villagers stopped. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the ground shook. Above them, the chapel collapsed inward with a deafening roar. The screaming resumed, louder now, not from one throat, but hundreds. The walls of the village began to crack. The moon turned blood red. The illusion was breaking. Grace and Elliot ran, dodging falling beams, smoke choking the air. They stumbled through the streets as buildings twisted, dissolving into mist. The villagers shrieked, their forms flickering. Some aged rapidly and crumbled to dust, others exploded into clouds of moths. The forest reappeared, the road emerging like a scar in the earth. The way out was open. But Moormire wasn't done. From the chapel's remains, a figure emerged, the high priest. Cloaked in darkness, his face was a void, his voice like 1,000 whispers layered on top of each other. "You will not leave!" Grace turned and screamed as the priest raised a hand. The air thickened. The ground cracked open. Elliot pushed her forward. "Go! Don't look back!" She hesitated, tears in her eyes. "Not without you! Run, Grace!" She ran. Elliot turned to face the priest. "You kept us trapped, fed on us." The priest's head tilted. "You fed yourselves. On fear. On doubt. We merely harvested." Elliot gritted his teeth, then pulled the torch from his belt and flung it into the remains of the chapel. The flames roared, catching the altar, the walls, the murals. The priest shrieked, his form unraveling like smoke. The village screamed with him. As the moon faded behind clouds, the mist thickened. Trees replaced buildings. The air grew colder. The last thing Elliot saw was the road ahead, Grace, waiting at the edge, calling his name. And then, silence. 3 days later, Grace was found wandering along a back road by a farmer. She couldn't speak at first, just kept repeating one word. "Moormire." The doctors chalked it up to trauma and dehydration. No one could find the village. No roads led to it. No maps recorded it. But Grace knew what she saw. She'd waited by the road for hours after Elliot vanished. But when the sun rose, all she saw were trees, endless and still. She still dreams of him. Sometimes she hears the bell. Sometimes she sees the moon, far too close. And sometimes, she hears chanting. She never travels during a full moon anymore. Just in case.